Okay, so today's video, we're going to discuss a talking point that I more so see a lot on my videos, um, usually in response to me saying something against whatever political, social, political talking point that is being portrayed in a comic or, let's say, TV or film adaptation of comic books and comic book characters. And that is comics have always been political. You'll hear something or see people say that all the time. And first of all, it's a complete non-point. What they're trying to do is shift and basically say, hey, you should allow this because something mildly political was brought up in the past. It doesn't even address the position, and it doesn't address the argument. And I want to explain why that it's a complete non-point to bring that up, but it's utterly stupid also as well. It's a stupid point to sort of bring up. First and foremost, the problem is that it's one-sided, it's an echo chamber. Most individuals recognize that comic books can be political. There have been usually some everybody's at some point, every comic book character has at some point had some conflict with the government. There's been politicians involved, so forth. We understand that historically. We understand that whatever war efforts has been taking place has been depicted in comic books. Comic book characters that fought Nazis and so forth. We understand that. So I don't think there's a whole lot of people that are saying there may be, but I don't think the main argument. Certainly, I'm not making the main argument that politics should be completely removed from the comic or politics can't be addressed in the comic. That's not the argument. Is that it's one side, and I'm gonna go in depth with that here in a little bit. The other thing is that it's too on the nose, and by too on the nose, I'm meaning that example Lois Lane issue number one. Talked about this on my page. They have chick that is a spokesperson for the White House that looks like Sarah Sanders, former spokesperson of the White House. She's grilling her about refugee camps, right? So, which is a play on the current narrative of concentration camps and what's taking place at the border and so forth and so forth. No talent, just literally wrote it in the book, right? And that's on the nose. Now, the thing that y'all like to point to the most is X-Men. That's everybody's beloved. Oh, hey, we point to the X-Men. Politics comics have always been political. X-Men is synonymous or more so analogous to the civil rights movement. That is completely false. That is a myth. I have a video on that if you want to look at that. I'm not going to explain all of that. But even if we assume that to be true, that actually debunks your nonsense because it is seen as a metaphor up for multiple interpretations and it's not on the nose, right? You say Malcolm X and they represent Malcolm X and MLK when you talk about Professor X and Magneto. None of those guys are even black, nonetheless. First, again, it's false. It's a false narrative. But even if we assume that to be true, they're not. They're not directly sort of representing that. But that's sort of what's taking place now. In that you're taking not things of that magnitude, of that massive, just a talking point here, and completely painting the person that is on the opposite side of that as a villain. Going back to my first point, the problem is the echo chamber. Now, it'd be one thing if, let's say, the writers, like, let's say Marvel, mainstream comics, Marvel and DC had a mix up of writers in terms of political ideology that are going to inject their politics into their comic, which, again, a talented writer can write a comic that he can heal. A talented writer can write one that represents the opposite side of them, what they feel personally. Neither here nor there. But it wouldn't be as many people bitching and moaning if there was some sort of balance. You had progressives, you had mainstream progressives, mainstream conservatism, or mainstream conservatives. You had anarchists like myself, libertarians, so forth, right? But that's not what we have. What we have is top heavy on the mainstream leftism, and we're seeing that those narratives, those talking points, being injected into the comics, and that's the problem. Is that the people that are on the opposite side of them are being painted as villains, and that's it. There's no alternative, like no other mainstream main character that's maybe presenting something of the opposite side, being that on the nose on top of that, and also being presented as the hero, and maybe let's say the progressive is being painted as a bad person. or that narrative. It's not really what we have right now. It's just top heavy on the leftism, and it's so bad to this point. We can read like Lois Lane issue number 1, and I'm like, all right, I'm willing to bet Greg Rucka, the person that wrote this, is a just orange man bad leftist, right? Go to his Twitter page, and that's exactly what I see. He got a little 45 on his profile picture, sort of being depicted as a Nazi symbol. Go to his Twitch, same old mainstream leftist talking points. It's just the same shit. The fact that I can read their books and literally predict their political affiliation just based on one book is fucking pathetic. But that's how it is, right? And it's top heavy on that. It seems like the vast majority of the writers are just mainstream leftists. There's no balance. So that's the problem that we're seeing, is that everybody feels like they have to use this as their canvas now because they can put on a show, so they're injecting their politics in it. There's no meta. It's not even the metaphor. It lacks the metaphor. It's just straight up, I beat you over the head with it, right? Something that Stan Lee said that he would never do. Again, I also have that video on my page as well, saying that, he tried to put those sort of underlying in the message, but never making it the main part of the story and feeling like you're beating the writer, or the more so the reader feels like they're being beat over the head with it. They completely took that logic and shat on it, right? Fuck that. I'm going to put that out there. And because we have Twitter now, everybody's connected. We see them, right? And we see their politics. They're showing you. And that's the problem, is that there's no balance. But they will paint the mainstream conservatives, orange man, bad. Hell, there's even a villain in Miles Morales that kind of looks like Trump. Miles Morales, SpiderMan. But I also was thinking, like, I don't know if you guys remember this amazing SpiderMan variant with this ass hat on the front, right? And, Mr. Suave, half black, drone bombing the shit out of more countries than Bush, deporting more people than the other presidents. That guy, but he's cool. He's half black. So what? Who cares, right? He's being right. Anybody want to take a guess as to if they're going to do this with Donald Trump? If Donald Trump's going to be painted as a good guy, a good person in the comic? You think that's going to happen? I answer that for you. Fuck no, that ain't going to happen. It's not even say I want that. I don't fuck with neither one of these asshats. Both of them leftists, if you ask me, but that's neither here nor there. I don't fuck with Trump or Barack Obama. So I'm not saying that I prefer to see him, but just using that as an example, do you think you're going to get a Trump being depicted in a positive light in a comic book, a mainstream comic book? Fuck no. It's not going to happen. That's indicative of the times, right? It's mainstream leftism. The writers are they dominate the arts. So it's not just comics. I've talked about this time and time again. It ain't just comics. These motherfuckers everywhere. But that's the problem, and why it's completely nonsensical for you to say that. Like, we get it, bro. Like, there's, we universally understand that Nazis are bad. Nazis have been painted as bad people in the comics. So I'm not saying that you should get somebody trying to be on the other side and thinking the Nazis are good. Fuck no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying for something minor, right? Or not even minor, maybe something that there's legitimate arguments to be made. It's not as dire as that, right? As Nazism or something like that. There's people that are on both sides of this, instead of maybe strawmanning their position and painting them as a negative person. Why don't you have other people maybe paint the alternative? I'm just saying that's a suggestion. Or y'all motherfuckers can just learn to write. To where if you write something, I don't feel like I know what your politics are because you're just a good writer. You could do that, which is more so the preferable thing to do. But as another alternative, if you're going to have these leftist writers that are just so dead set on putting their politics in the comics at least have some balance. That's all I'm saying. And there's no balance. And that's the problem, is that there's no fucking balance on these sort of minor sort of issues and talking points. Is that you have people on different sides of this, but they're generally being painted as the villain, and the person that's going to be painted in the positive light as the fucking hero is somebody that has the mainstream progressive sort of ideology, be it in the character or be it just in the overall narrative of the actual comic book, and that is the problem. So to conclude, we understand, and I understand, that politics have been a part of comics. So the problem is that right now it's so top fucking heavy on some of these issues, and that it's mainstream leftism, that it's becoming insufferable. And this is why you're seeing these communities rise up that are like, look, bro, we are tired of this shit. We are tired of your progressive efforts being in every fucking thing that we read, or every other thing that we read. There's no creativity in there. You guys just taking main talking points and just literally copying and pasting them bitches in the comic, like Lois Lane issue number 1. That's the problem. So keep that in mind before you comment something as dumb as comics have always been political.